What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Kemple of Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. I'm super excited. I have a guest, and we're going to talk about something that is very dear to my heart, and I think is very important to share. He is from St. Louis. He is an author. He is a relationship and personal coach, and he's in the transition of breaking up with corporate. So you know he's on his way up. Please welcome Ted Smith. Ted, thank you for joining us today. Can you please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about your background?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Deanna. Thanks for having me. I'm Ted Smith. I'm based in St. Louis. I'm an author and coach. Really, my background is I was in an abusive relationship for 15 years that I ended 2 years ago. And that is what led me to write my book. And I've, since make it my life's passion, my purpose. I found a lot of fulfillment in having conversations with people to help them on their journeys with their relationships, not only with other people, but with themselves. That's the most important part. And so I'm really excited to be here and have this conversation.
Me too. And this might, we're going to get probably a little vulnerable here and speak our truth, but I think it's very important. And I've had other guests on that have been in abusive relationships, and we've talked about that, and it definitely helps the audience. Anybody that's listening that's in something that's you're questioning, just let us know, reach out. We're happy to help, to give you a little bit of advice from our side. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but there are many different levels of abuse, right? Mm-hmm. And I've had all. I've had the sexual, I've had the emotional, I've had the physical, I've had the mental. And, typically when it starts with one, it goes into the others, right?
Yep.
It's like a domino effect. It starts going and going and going and going, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And it never, ever really gets better.
Right. Absolutely. And I experienced all forms of it as well. He only hit me once, but there were other forms of physical abuse as well, which I didn't recognize as physical abuse. The acts of like intimidation and like tickling, as an example, that he would pass off as a joke. But I could feel the energy behind it, that it was more intimidation, which is a form of physical abuse. And I think that is a great example of something that, one of the reasons I was in that relationship for 15 years is because even though I knew I wasn't happy with him and that I didn't like how he made me feel, I didn't realize that what was happening was abuse. Right. As far as emotional abuse, I thought that emotional abuse meant just constant fighting, constant, derision and ridicule, and it's like, no, actually the people who are the best at emotional abuse employ a cycle where there is a love bombing stage, purposely putting in there that things are good and things are happy and things are how the relationship should be.
A narcissist.
A narcissist, yeah, and that keeps the person around. He was an emotionally abusive, alcoholic narcissist. So there were many layers to the abuse and the addiction and the codependency that I experienced.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that you went through that. That's really tough. And 15 years is that's a long investment in someone.
Yeah.
And so before we started recording, I shared with you, I've been in a lot of abusive relationships. And for me, I don't know about you, but mine started with my father. My father was very abusive physically to me and to my mother, and very verbally abusive and threatening in a sense, because I'm the oldest of 5. And so when they were real little, he would threaten us. We had to behave a certain way or else, this, that, and the other thing. And that started my unfortunate journey with my relationship moving forward. And so I love the title of your book, Healthy Me, Happy We, because really at the end of the day, no matter where you are in your journey, your path and relationships, whether it's good or bad, this or that, and the other thing, it always starts with you, right?
Absolutely.
And so as I was sharing with you before we got started, I kind of broke away from some of my typical abusive relationships that got me into to human trafficking, into a lot of abuse. My one boyfriend stabbed me, he kidnapped me, beat me up. I have a scar on my face. I met my husband. He was not that normal abusive type of guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it was more controlling. It wasn't kind of narcissistic, but it was all about him, but I didn't realize what that was either, but then I'm already in it. I'm married, and it just as he keeps doing his steroids, it kind of gets worse and worse and worse. And then he starts getting sick and more sick. And so then
Yep.
I'm definitely in it. That I become the caretaker, and I've just invested all my life with this man. And now, I mean, he did not make it, but I just kept thinking to myself, there has to be something better than this. And we went to counseling. And, for me, I think when I checked out was when he did hit me at one point. He did put his hands on me. And so after he passed, I thought, okay, I'm going to be healing. I'm going to be good. But I was in such a trauma phase, like of where I was with that I attracted someone that I had dealt with way before, like very physically abusive, very emotionally and mentally abusive. And it was that probably was one of the most scarring relationships in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have so many things to say.
Go ahead, lay it on me, baby.
it all comes, like you said, it all comes back down to that relationship with yourself. So just to share a bit about my childhood, I actually had very, very loving parents. But what started at an early age was my self-abuse. So I, as a protective measure, as a way of getting love and attention, I developed perfectionism as a way, as something. And when I wouldn't get something right, like in school, I was very academically successful, but I put a lot of pressure on myself, and it's something even as low as an A- on a test, like wasn't good enough for me. And then growing up in a small town and kind of navigating coming out in the 90s and early 2000s, that was also a very challenging time. Because I feared acceptance from my family. They ended up being very accepting, but that fear that I put onto myself and the shame of not being who I truly am, just really put a lot of abuse onto myself, and just like lack of acceptance for myself and rejection toward myself. All of that compiled and is exactly what attracted someone to my life who treated me exactly like I treated myself.
Yeah.
And if we don't do the work on ourselves to heal and grow and process the stuff that we've been through, we will continue to attract relationships to us that are not healthy.
Yeah.
That's what that speaks to the patterns of folks like you who somehow end up attracting, more and more abusers. It's because there's more work to do on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can feel, so for me, I don't know about you, but like you can feel that energy. Like now I'm so much more in tune. Like I'm such an empath. I didn't even realize that I was, that I was like, now these days, like if I'm around someone who has that bad energy, like it affects me. I can't handle it. Like, it's like, oh, I got to get away. Like, woo, like you're a little hot, baby. You better calm down,
Right. Which is a really cool ability if we know how to use it and know what it means and can listen to it. I had so many gut feelings through my 15 years, but first of all, I didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
Second of all, when I did, was like, what's that? I didn't know. I didn't want to listen to it, nor did I know how.
Sure.
So after, through the healing process, I've learned not only about how like reading other people's energy, but it comes down again, the relationship with yourself, like feeling in your body, like what it's like to be around another person, how they make you feel, that sort of thing.
So let me ask something. So how long has it been since, so you said 2 years ago.
2 years, yeah.
So now have you gotten into a new relationship?
I have had a couple relationship experiences. I am not currently in a relationship per se. Kind of where I'm at right now is I don't see myself. So backing up. So with my ex, we got together when I was 17 and we ended it when I was 32. So I never had the chance to like date around and have fun and just like casually see people and have dates and that sort of thing. So I'm on the online dating apps now and having fun with that. But really? I don't really see.
I hate that.
Well, fun. Okay, it comes and goes. I have my frustrations. I was just sharing with some friends last night that I shared a GIF of a dentist pulling teeth, and I said, "This is actual footage of me trying to have conversations with guys on the dating apps."
Oh God, yeah.
It's just painful. Anyway, but it's been fun to a degree. I actually have a date later tonight.
Oh yay! Exciting.
So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But it's fun to explore it with curiosity and not be attached to the outcome.
Yes.
So my pattern, had been to jump into relationship status right away. I did that with my ex-husband. 5 months after I ended it with him, I began a 10-month relationship with a man who ended up being my first experience with a healthy relationship. It was awesome. He was a great guy. But we jumped into relationship status right away. There was no like courting period or no like, me seeing other guys, that sort of thing. It just was like, this is it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that did a disservice to both of us, especially for me, because I needed time still to heal from the 15 years prior, but also just to explore other options and really find out what I wanted. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I am enjoying conversations with different guys now, but I also don't see myself as the hookup type. So I'm somewhere in between
Yeah.
where like I want meaningful connection, but without the commitment,
Yeah.
guaranteed commitment.
Hey guys, Deanna here with Label Free Podcast. Summer is coming. Are you a six-pack kind of guy or a dad bod kind of guy? Either way, our friends at Manscaped have the fellas' hairy bodies covered. They just launched their 4th generation performance package, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0. That's right, you heard that right, 4.0. Trim from the leaders in male grooming. So the man in your life can join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code LABELFREE20. That's right, 20% off with free shipping with the code LABELFREE20. So head on over to their website, manscaped.com, and pick up something for yourself, the man in your life, whomever that might want to benefit from keeping everything nice and tight for the summer. So I can relate to that. So I've always been a relationship person too. And so like yourself, like after I ended that real toxic relationship 5 years ago, it took me a while. It took me a while to actually like even be interested in dating anyone. Okay.
Yeah.
I did get on the dating apps and I got right off. but then I would go back on because a girl's got needs. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
All right. So a girl's got needs. Sometimes we are animals at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But I knew what I was looking for at that point, but I did not get attached, right? So I never really experienced like that whole dating thing either because I would always have long-term relationships. And so during the last 5 years, as I've been working on myself and things would come up and be triggers, I'm sure like for yourself.
Yep.
And then like I told you before we start recording, when I start actually trying to date someone that I might be interested in, one red flag, and I was like, oh, I'm out. See ya. Peace. Like,
yeah.
And that was good for me to go through. It was good for me to experience because now I'm in like this incredible relationship with this amazing man. And I never thought anything like what we have was possible. I never thought at all. So beautiful. It's part of that journey. So talk to us about this book. And so we understand like the whole behind it, what brought you there and why you wrote it. So that had to be a very cathartic experience for you writing it.
It absolutely was. So the way I've structured the book is it's a lot of narrative about my personal experience, kind of interwoven with the things I've learned about how abuse and addiction and codependency generally look. So it's a mix of, a lot of self-help books are all narrative. A lot of self-help books are all kind of content and educational. I like to do a mix of the two because I don't necessarily resonate with either end. The first half is, I will admit, a little heavy because it documents, my experience in that 15-year relationship. So describing what the abuse looked like and what it can look like for other people, as well as the addiction and his alcohol abuse, which ended up creating the rock bottom experience that allowed me to wake up finally.
Ooh, okay.
And then navigating how I've healed from that in the last couple of years, as well as once we heal that relationship with ourselves, what we can experience in healthy relationships with other people.
Yeah. Do you want to share what that rock bottom experience was?
Sure. Yeah. So He abused alcohol for our entire relationship, which it kept getting worse and worse. But I did not realize until the very end that he was an alcoholic, which, as I tell the story now, it's like, how did I not realize this? But sometimes we don't know, we have this tunnel vision and just
Yeah.
have blinders on and not wanting to accept the reality of our situation. Um, but he struggled with anxiety and depression, and he would self-medicate with alcohol, which um, if anybody is curious, like treating depression with a depressant is not actually all that effective.
No.
Um, and because he abused alcohol so much, he developed some really significant health issues, centering around seizures and
Wow.
neurological issues. So he had a couple grand mal seizures about 5 years into our relationship, and over the next decade or so had kind of mini episodes on. It got to a point where it was pretty much a daily basis, where the more he drank, the more his symptoms got worse and worse. He'd experience dizziness and weakness and memory loss and just confusion and body aches, headaches, and it'd be completely unpredictable on a day-to-day basis as to what to expect.
Yeah.
But I did notice that the more he drank, the worse his symptoms were. And, I would approach him about it from time to time. Not all the time, because I didn't feel safe to communicate, my frustrations and
Yeah.
my fears, because it would always get thrown back on me. But when I would muster up the courage to share those concerns, he'd kind of shrug it off, or he would promise to change, and then the next day he'd be drinking just as much. That all culminated in a rock bottom where he had become so dependent on alcohol that his body couldn't go 8 hours without it.
Ooh.
He had a day of vomiting all day. He had 3 grand mal seizures in one night, and I called 911 during the last seizure. They admitted him to the ICU for a week to treat him for alcohol withdrawal. And
So he would get up and drink and just drink all day?
yeah, he was drinking hard alcohol in the morning and
Oh my
for the
God.
rest of the day. Yeah,
Oh,
which I didn't I knew he was drinking a lot at night, but I didn't realize he was also drinking alcohol in the morning. He
that's
had lost his job and was home most of the day. So the night of the 3 grand mal seizures and the experience of witnessing someone go through alcohol withdrawal is an experience I would not wish on anyone. It was something that you would see in a TV show or a movie. Like, I'm
yeah.
like, is this really happening to me, sort of thing. Like, it
Right.
was very, very numbing. And as horrific as it was, I'm grateful for it, because it's what I needed to wake up.
Yeah.
I finally admitted that I needed help. It wasn't my realization that it was time to leave him, but it was my realization that I can't do this anymore. I can't play nurse for him. Like, something has to change.
Yeah.
And so I started going to a therapist and started going to Al-Anon meetings. And that's honestly, those two things are what saved my life.
That's amazing. Well, good for you. For
Yeah.
good for you for being able to wake up, and good for you for being strong enough to get through it. I mean, that's got to be super intense. I mean, yeah, my husband was a steroid addict. It's almost just as bad, because once he like kept doing the steroids and his body just kept breaking down, like, he had a death wish, and that's
Yeah.
ultimately what killed him at the end. So, I mean, I experienced some of that, not to that level, but in and out of the hospital. And that's hard, man. That's hard.
It's really hard to watch your partner's life or just body deteriorate in front of you. And
Yes.
they told me that on the spectrum of alcoholism and how severe it was, like, his next step was death. They said if I didn't call 911 that night, he probably would have died.
Is he still alive?
He is still alive. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you saved his life.
I did save his life. Yeah. And the doctors did too. I mean, it's a very careful, meticulous process for them to, like, it's the right amount of drugs and the right amount of timing. Because if they don't treat alcohol withdrawal in a certain way, again, the body can just go into shock and the person can die. So very extreme situation. I just
Well,
have to share that when you said you saved his life, like, that really struck me. I haven't
accepted that.
I've heard that before, but it's been a while, and like I've had a lot of healing and processing for myself since then.
Right.
And so that that brought up some stuff. So, but thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no, no, you certainly did. I wish I could have for my late husband, but he just wasn't interested in really saving himself. I think he had given
Yeah.
up. So when I'm administering dialysis, he's still injecting. Like,
Mm.
and we'd get in fights. Like, what are you going to do? You're being super selfish. You're being selfish. And he had 4 daughters from a previous marriage, and it's just like, what does this do for you?
Yeah.
Like, your body is giving up. This does nothing. You got to stop. And just went zoom over his head. Did not want to hear it. Just
right.
So
and
that's yeah.
You can't argue with an addict because
Yeah.
they perceive the way the brain works is they perceive that substance to be their solution to their problems.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Yeah, yeah, it's very bizarre. So I want to just, before we start wrapping things up, I just kind of want to talk about like your community as as a gay man, correct?
Yeah.
And from one of my best friends, he's like my little brother. He kind of, my family embraced him because he did not, his mother was not as accepting, and he went through a lot of stuff himself. And he actually ended up getting into some abusive relationships with men that had alcoholic tendencies. And I remember I went over one time and I rescued him from this guy's house, and I kicked this guy's ass. Like,
yeah.
I was like, you better get away from my little brother. I'm gonna kill you. Like, but as I watched him grow up into a young man and watched him go through some of these really toxic relationships, I found that a lot of the men that he was getting involved with did have like drug or alcohol problems. And as I've make more friends in your community, that is something that's kind of relevant.
It is. I think a lot of it comes down to a lot of the internalized homophobia and shame that we have. It's sort of like what I experienced in my growing up, not accepting myself for who I was, not feeling okay to be myself. And again, when you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself, many things can manifest, and addictions are one of those things. So self-medicating was something that we perceive to make us feel better, and in reality, they may give us a quick fix or a quick hit, but over the long term, it's only making things worse and increasing that depression, increasing that just shame and the internalized abuse that we put on ourselves.
Okay, well, let's save lives here today, Ted. Okay, you guys, you got to go check out his book. Whether you know someone that is in a relationship that's toxic, they're dealing with someone with addictive tendencies. Healthy me, happy we. And I think we all want to be healthy and happy, and so it really all starts with ourselves. Ted, before we say goodbye, can you please let the audience know where they can find your book, find you, reach out to you, all those good things?
Yeah, so I have a link tree available at tedsmith.life, and you can find everything there. You can find the link to my book. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, all of which you can find at tedsmith.life.
Perfect. And I'll put that in the show notes so you guys can go one click, boom, you can get them all right there. And definitely, I think that I'm sure you're here to, if anybody wants to reach out to you directly and have a conversation with you that can relate to your experience, that you're open to that.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm a coach now, so the reason I wrote the book, the reason I'm coaching is to help people like me to understand how they can have a healthy relationship with themselves, and how that then really just creates, everything kind of falls into place when you have a healthy relationship with yourself.
Amen. All right. Yes, Ted, thank you so much for sharing your story, being vulnerable with us here today. It has been an absolute pleasure. And I'm sure you got great things on the horizon. So anything new comes up, please let us know. We'd love to have you back and talk about that and how you're moving forward in your relationship status. You'll have
Will
to
do.
Love it. All right,
Thanks,
guys.
Steven.
Oh, wait. One last thing. Any last words of wisdom or advice you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, just to reiterate, it all comes down to that healthy relationship with yourself. It allows for happiness in your own life. It allows for happy relationships with other people. It all starts within.
Yeah. And that journey is different for everyone. So nobody's looks exactly the same. So just remember that when you're thinking about that and processing it. This is your host, Deanna Kemple with Label Free Podcast. Live your best life. You must live label free. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, follow, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.